Everywhere we go, I and I will go, and everything he say, oh yes it's hard. So I can die and I and I and I follow you. Come on, yes, follow you. Follow, Marcus, yeah. Why can't I and I and I and I follow you? He never commit no crime. He always do right. So why can't I and I and I follow? Follow, Marcus, yeah. Why can't I and I and I follow you? Come
Yes, greetings one and all, and thank you again for joining us here on Unity and Solidarity TV. Today is Sunday, April 6, 2025, according to the Gregorian calendar. And of course, we have to, give thanks and praises for another day in the land of the living. And we want to also pause just for a few seconds because, as we know, April is a very sacred month because we lost one of the freedom fighters who was tragically and maliciously taken away from us. I speak of none other than Dr. Martin Luther King. So just join me for a couple of seconds as we just remember his work and his contribution to the struggle. All right, and thank you so much. Thank you so much. So, family, as promised, we have another big and serious conversation today. I am joined by my brother, Mr. Renate Bryson, secretary of the Soualiga Foundation, that has caused much damage since its existence. You all right? Has caused much damage and has forced many learned persons in the community at home and abroad to rethink and revisit the colonial relationship between Great Bay and The Hague. So therefore, because we know that December 2024 marked the 70th anniversary of the Kingdom Charter of the Netherlands, and of course, we would imagine that there was much discussion, presentations, seminars, champagne, caviar, right? Renewed commitment towards ensuring that the kingdom continues and so forth and so on. But with some of these presentations, you always have critical voices. Besides those who want to maintain the status quo and present this idea, this project, as it were, as though it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. So some of us on this part of the ocean have a very different experience. And I think in the interest of our listeners and viewers and of those who have a passing interest in this particular topic, I thought it necessary to invite of course, Mr. Renate Bryson to share his thoughts, right? And even documentation to show
Yes.
why we on Soualiga have a different experience when it comes to the Kingdom Charter. So to be
Correct.
clear, December 15, 2024 marked 70 years since the Kingdom Charter of the Netherlands came into existence. The occasion was marked by presentations, speeches, and seminars, not to mention the haring and the champagne and everything else, right? And everybody wasted no time to share their thoughts about the Charter of the Netherlands. To be clear, the Charter regulates a constitutional relationship between the four countries that make up the kingdom: the Netherlands, Aruba, Curacao, and St. Martin. The Charter provides that the four countries manage their own affairs autonomously and are jointly responsible for kingdom affairs. It also lays down rules governing mutual assistance, consultation, and cooperation, and the constitutional organization of the countries. The charter was adopted in 1954. Since then, the countries of the kingdom have conducted their internal affairs autonomously on the basis of equality. The charter may be amended only with the agreement of all countries, and it takes precedence over the individual countries' constitutions. To some, the charter is, quote, the foundation of our kingdom ties, designed to foster unity in, quote, areas such as defense, foreign affairs, and the protection of human rights, equality and cooperation among the four countries in the kingdom with both social and historical significance. Scholars, political scientists would have us believe that 1954 marked the end of colonialism and ushered in a new order, one of autonomy. But those of us who are students of history and pay keen attention between the relationship between Great Bay and The Hague have a different view. For us, it reinforces the unequal, undemocratic colonial relationship between The Hague and Great Bay. To quote a professor in constitutional affairs, um, Raison Santos do Nascimento, het koninkrijk is
Yes.
zelf een bron van onderdrukking. Basically, the kingdom is in itself a source of oppression.
Correct.
Now, as I said again, I am joined by none other than Mr. Bryson, and I invited him to pick his brain. As I said again, his foundation has literally ripped through and put asunder, basically dismantled, right? So many of these so-called arrangements that we've taken for granted, right?
Yes.
And put it before the world to show
Yeah.
the hypocrisy, the double standards, where it pertains to the quote-unquote kingdom of the Netherlands.
Correct.
Brother Renate, welcome and thanks again for joining
Thank
us.
you for having me, Bakari. We would like to let the viewers and listeners know that it was because this week we had one of our great brethren from The Hague over here giving a narrative about the Kingdom Charter and the Kingdom structure that we ended up deciding to have this conversation. I had an MP who reached out to me and asked me why I wasn't there. And I told her quite diplomatically that these conversations don't change in the halls of USM, they change in the halls of Parliament. And it's very funny that we're getting an invitation to come and speak at USM in front of a Dutchman, rather than having the Dutchman come to Parliament and let us sit side by side with the Dutchman and let us discuss the history of the Kingdom Charter, how it came about, because that is the main crux here.
Listen.
Yes,
I think you've been reading my notes, but continue.
Yeah. So the main crux of it is this, right? I will go on a limb and I will say this, right? I would say there are no politicians anywhere in the kingdom, from The Hague to Oranjestad to Willemstad to the bottom to the Great Bay, none of them that can tell you succinctly what happened from 1953 to December 15th, 1955. So what makes Soualiga different is we ran into a book by a professor, Dr. Hillebrink, who received his doctorate in law from Leiden University regarding this topic. So it means that everything that Soualiga, we didn't just make this up. We came across this material and then we cross-referenced his material, and we went a step further and said, you know what? Instead of just using a primary source or secondary source from a very reputable source, we're going to go find the original documentations of the meeting. So we actually went into the UN archives and we dug up what every single delegate said in 1955, like between November until the ratification of the Kingdom Charter, and we're going to provide that today. What I kind of left off was, a lot of people speak of the Kingdom Charter today of what it means and what it is, etc., but nobody goes back to 1954 and 1955 to see what was the prevailing sentiment of the United Nations when this documentation came about. It was a resounding no from everyone, okay, except for the United States, the UK, France, Europe, etc. But you got to remember, the UN is made up of mainly former colonized territories.
That's right.
So when they saw this documentation coming to them in 1955, a lot of these former colonies or these former founding members, like the Dominican Republic and Paraguay and India and all these places, who were themselves were sufferers of colonialism, said,
that's right,
this looks like what we just came out of. And we're gonna go through the documentation today. We had a PowerPoint presentation that we presented to Parliament in 2023, proving to them that we are not decolonized based on UN records. And I'm going to provide some of that today.
Nice. Listen, I am so happy that you started off that way. And because you started off that way, I'm gonna make an attempt to meet you where you are. Because
go ahead, my brother.
When I was going through the pages of history,
yes,
I have come across some information that suggests that this charter in particular, right, came about because of several factors. Not because, in better words, it came about because of international pressure. It came about because Holland was decimated after World War II. It came about because of the Cuban Revolution. It came about because of the growing sentiment for nationalism in the Caribbean. It came about because the English-speaking Caribbean was trying to form federation also. Okay?
Yes.
And it came about because America, after assisting The Hague, right, to remove Germany, right, said to Holland, look here, you need to fix this because we can't chase Germany from Holland because they were oppressors, and then you in turn have this strange relationship with your colonies.
Correct.
And then let us also remember that the islands wasn't significant to Holland. All of their attention was in the East Indies, quote unquote.
Correct. In Indonesia. Okay. Yes.
All of their attention was there. So even when they were making their speeches, right? When Wilhelmina was making her speech from London and then from Canada, it was not with the Caribbean in mind. It was not in Suriname in mind.
No, it was with Indonesia
a way to appease.
Correct.
Exactly. So I was telling my queen last night, I was telling my queen last night, it reminds me of a person who wants a particular male or female but can't get them, so they settle for the next available option. You understand?
Correct.
And of course, we had some very bright and progressive thinkers in the islands, in the form of, for example, Da Costa Gomez, who seized upon the opportunity, right, to say, well, you know what, we want self-government for the islands and so forth and so on.
Right.
You see, so I am happy that you brought that in, right, with the United Nations, and I'm hoping to have complemented what you said to give the context.
Yes, see, that's what's missing. Yeah, the historical context is often missed in the 2020s, or let's say since 2000, the historical context is missed. No one goes back and sees how this thing came about. What was the UN saying at the time? What was the prevailing sentiment at the time? Another thing that Holland got wrapped on the fingers for was right after Hitler had invaded the Netherlands, right? Indonesia had decided that they wanted their independence, and the same exact things that the Germans did to Holland, right?
Holland
that caused the monarchy to leave Holland. They did the same exact thing to Indonesia, having a massive massacre, whereby the international community had to step in and say, absolutely not. Absolutely not. How dare you? You just got overrun. We, the United States, just gave you a whole heap of, not even loans, grants.
That's right.
To start you over again. Took your agriculturalists and sent them to Iowa and Oklahoma to study. That's why today you see Holland is so progressive with the agriculture. It's one of the biggest food producers. And KLM was a direct beneficiary of these monies. We basically gave you guys money because it was not in America's interest to have a Western Europe that was overrun and economically vulnerable. Not in their interest, a capitalist country.
Correct. Yes.
So they went and fixed it up. And then while we're there fixing you up, you're down in Indonesia doing the same things that the Germans did to you. And that was basically what sent alarm bells ringing prior to the Kingdom Charter and what got the ball rolling for them to fix up. But they did not fix up, obviously.
No, and listen, I also want to include, that the monies that was sent to Europe, Holland, whomever, came about by virtue of the Marshall Plan. I don't know if you remember that.
That is it. The Marshall Plan. That is the name of it.
Plan.
And per capita, Holland was one of the biggest recipients of the Marshall Plan remunerations per capita. Yes.
Okay.
So if you took the populations of all the countries that got money, Holland was one of the biggest recipients of the Marshall Plan. Correct.
There you go.
You are well studied and well read.
I tried. Right.
You know what we did.
And then the sweet part is this. They like to portray Holland as this hardworking, always saving their money, being very prudent. But that money that was used or allocated is a direct result of the exploitation of Africa.
Correct.
You understand what I'm saying? So basically, it is the exploitation of African labor and resources that went into rebuilding Holland.
Correct. You see? And you have to, and both of us having gone to Ghana, we know firsthand what the Almina Castle represents. One of the biggest slave castles or slave encampments on the western coast of Africa was run by the Dutch for almost 200 years. And then we know about the Dutch East India Company, which was, I don't know the percentage, but I know it's more than half. Some people say 60%, 70% of the slaves. Actually, I like to call them prisoners of war.
That's right.
My ancestors were lawyers and doctors and butchers and, and medicine men and teachers and farmers. They were not slaves. They were prisoners of war.
That's right.
Were actually brought over on Dutch ships. They were contracted by a lot of other countries to do the transshipment for them because historically speaking, the Dutch have always been very good seafarers. And that was part of the reason too why this Dutch East India Company. So if you look at the whole component of it, it's interesting that they like to label it slavery past. Like but it has nothing to do with today. It's a very interesting term, kind of like autonomous within the kingdom. So like I'm in your house, you have autonomy in the living room. But once you go up on the street, you ain't got no autonomy. You know, all of these catchphrases that, you know, our politicians not being very savvy with the word play, buy into these things and run around and talk about slavery past. I mean, what is that? Autonomy within the kingdom. Look at what they're saying. You have autonomy, but once you don't leave our kingdom,
exactly,
within the kingdom is a fallacy in itself because there is none. There was just an article that came out on Friday or Thursday, where the ex-minister Renate, the Kingdom Council, warned St. Martin about a delay in your budget. A week after the Honorable Prime Minister of St. Martin went to Holland talking about this is a step in a new direction, and this is a new narrative, and this is the new way forward. 7 days later, there goes your government getting a warning. And and again, it's always this cry wolf situation with our politicians here. Like Maya Angelou said, when a person show me who you are, when a person shows you who they are, believe them the first time.
That's correct.
So, and it's a week. It was very apropos that a week after coming back from The Hague and making these statements in the newspaper that is going to be equity and equitable, and we're looking to a new fruitful relationship, there comes the Rijksministerraad warning St. Martin about your budget delay. Warning basically means toezicht, higher supervision.
That's right.
The invocation of Articles 50 and 51 of the Kingdom Charter.
Yep, that's right. And you know, I'm so happy you said that, because there is a Haitian proverb that says the tree remembers, but the axe forgets.
Correct.
Okay. And those of us who have been on the other side of that axe, we can't forget. You understand? And that's the reason why during the presentation, when I gave my response to...
Yes, I would like to hear from you. Maybe that would be a good thing too. I know we pressed for time today because of table tennis, but it would be good for you because I didn't go, and I forgot. And in the evenings, Monday through Friday, being an educator, I'm tired in the evenings. I usually relax, so midweek is bad for me. But it would be good to let us know what you heard, what you found as a Pan-African and as a good son of Marcus Garvey. What did you? Here I am taking your role. What did
I realized that, but I like it.
Yeah. What did you get from? I mean, I have a pretty good idea, fluff, but what did you get that was?
You know, when I walked in, and I saw this setup, I say, okay, there's a lot of learned people in this room.
Correct.
Okay, so I was kind of expecting a more vibrant conversation.
Correct.
So the good gentleman, he came in and he started off by basically laying the foundation to let you know his street cred, his reputation, his various functions, where he served, his familiarity with the islands and so forth. Of course, he had to start off his discussion about the manner in which Holland came into the picture. So immediately placing the Dutch pirates at the center of history. Okay? Talked about the manner, the colonial wars. I think in his mind, he probably gave a balanced view, right? But for those of us on the other side, I wasn't really too impressed. No. He did, I don't want to say dance around, right? But he did make mention of, it's a colonial relationship, right?
Correct.
He made mention about it's not a perfect document, but it's good. It doesn't make any sense to change it because it's going to take so much time and energy, right? He even made a comment about there's no real appetite for independence based on a recent service, but he didn't give any source. Excuse me.
I think he might be referring to what the People's Tribune did with a sample size of 200 plus people, where, and I can kind of understand that thing with independence, but I guess that would be a talk for another time. I believe we can go independent. You believe we can go independent. Pan-Africanists believe we can go independent, but we know the reasons why the average citizen on the road would have trepidation based on what has occurred the last 15 years.
That's right. and the thing is this, right? And like what you said, anybody can have their opinion.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
But until we make that decision, whatever treatment Holland meets out against us, right? You gotta be prepared to take it.
Correct.
Because if you sign up for this, right,
then don't complain.
You gotta take everything.
Don't complain and don't be delusional talking about equal partners within the kingdom. You know what you've signed up for.
Exactly.
Don't complain And here's my whole thing, right? And it's very simple, because what I told somebody the other day when I was on the radio, I don't like to make things complicated for people to understand, because like you and I, like you're a well-read person, and I try to keep up with you. But just on layman's terms, if you're elected to office and you have no issues with higher supervision, you are part of the problem. You are basically saying, I am here to manage, I am not here to lead. That is it. That is it. It doesn't get any clearer than that. If know you've won an election, I'm going to represent my people in parliament, and I have no problem with being put aside. Like, for instance, budget is late. When that warning was given, the warning basically was, in unwritten language, the invocation of instructions to dismiss the government.
That's right.
Get it together, or the governor is going to step in. So if you have no issues with the governor, who played a major focal role in the last election by denying a couple of our elected officials ministerships, and they themselves could do nothing or refuse to do anything. Then you have the higher supervision, and then you have the thing where we cannot amend our constitution to get these things, put aside. Once you sign up, okay, it's one thing to sign up and get elected and then say, once I get in office, these are the things I'm going to work on. But if you're in office and you're telling me, you're texting me on WhatsApp, Bryson, why you ain't here? I said, but this ain't the place. That's not the forum. The forum is on the parliament floor. The forum is your decolonization committee. I'm not going to take a Wednesday for some guy you invite down here, and you guys are not going to ask him the burning questions. I'm supposed to go out there and grill this man. When you're the elected official, have all the information, ignore the information, maintaining the status quo, and want somebody else to do the heavy lifting for you? Absolutely not. Absolutely
Listen,
not.
You know what I thought was amazing? Because there was a number of parliamentarians in the room. Correct. What was amazing to me was that you all Soualiga received more questions. Yeah. More questions. Yeah. Right? During basically the same amount of time than this presenter. Nothing. Okay, one or two MPs asked a question.
Here's the thing. You must put yourself in their shoes. I always do that. I always put myself in their shoes, and I've just come to look. It's not personal attacks. I don't want people to say I'm here. What I call the remember the last politician we had who was running around being very vile and those things. I don't like to get vile and personal, talking about people's children and what you have and corruption. I don't know anything about those things unless they come out in the paper. So I'm not here to say, you're corrupt. I don't do those. But what I will say is this. For some reason, there's an intrinsic fear across all of these islands about having the real conversations. Give you a case in point. Business class travel 2 weeks ago. Boy, that brought them boiling. There was, you could see the emotion.
You saw the fraud coming on the mouth.
We got work to do. We got to represent the people. Where is that energy for something 10 million times more important? Yeah. It's nowhere to be found. They pick and choose their battles. I think, and it's sad too, because we have such a new blood of parliament. The politicians that we grew up with, for the most part, are gone. And we have a new, and they're carrying on with the same docile, apologetic, refusing to ask questions. And you know what made Soualiga so successful? We didn't get into propaganda with the Dutch state. We didn't get into name calling. We didn't get into cotton picking. We didn't get into slavery. Those things are important. We didn't get into things that made them uncomfortable. What we did was we got into a legal wrangling with them. You understand? We left the emotional stuff out and we played the legal game with them. And when they saw that the legal argumentations we were presenting were beyond their scope, they just ran from it. They just ran from it.
Yeah.
Now, we are a non-governmental organization. What we've asked Parliament to do is the same questions that we've asked, put them in paper and just send them to the State Secretary diplomatically. It becomes an official document. And the weight of these questions that you would be asking, they would have to respond because the Eerste Kamer and the Tweede Kamer are filled with legal-minded Dutch people.
Right. That's
they
right.
went to Leiden. They're constitutional professors. They're constitutional lawyers. They're paralegals. They have studied. They know that. So when you ask these kind of questions, especially coming from the islands, they'll be set up like, wow, we haven't had these kind of engagements with them before. Normally, it's beggy, gimme, money, wanty, helpy. So now if you come with a different discourse, the kind of discourse they have amongst themselves, you will get the respect in the ear of these people, because the European not respect, but they are proponents of law, even though they break the law, but the law, because they set up the law, finance, military.
That's right.
Finance, law, military. Military, obviously, but the financial arguments that we have with them it's always not from a point of equal. It's always from the beggy perspective.
That's right.
So there's nothing going on there. Lend us, help us, we need, give us. So there's no what you call high-level financial discourse with the Dutch state. So that leaves the legal. Now, if we come and we give you the blueprint, just ask them these questions. You don't have to tell them they came from us. You will get a response.
Exactly.
You know that we got a response from the State Secretary for some of the questions that we asked her. Yes,
of course.
She answered us.
Yeah.
The address on it says, like, my uncle's address, Brill Drive, Middle Region, St. Martin. Like, and so we turn around to the parliamentarians. When is the last time the State Secretary sent you a letter?
Yeah. Oh.
You see? So it's the kind of discourse that we were having. We weren't being rude. We weren't making them uncomfortable with slavery talk, because fool gotta know how to you gotta play fool to catch the wise. We engaged them, and then when we had them engaging, we wrapped them with those questions, and they were like, and here's the thing. The State Secretary was ordered by the first chamber, answer these questions and CC us in the answers.
Oh, wow.
Because they knew the level of questionings that we're asking. So what we're asking Parliament is, we're not saying go up there and try to block, the Eerste Kamer with chains and chain yourself to a car and go on a hunger strike. No, but letter to pen, diplomatically, State Secretary, we had some questions about these questions here. Could you allude to that? And then here's what happens. When you get the answer, it becomes a legal fact. Something now that you can use. But they're not doing it. You have to get the Dutch to put it on paper, and then you can proceed forward. But brother,
but let me add this.
Yes.
Next to your point about an intrinsic fear.
Yes.
My feeling is this, that the question where it pertains to, let's say, political independence, let's say inequality within the kingdom at times, I feel that some politicians only use it for political mileage.
Yes. They use it for an emotional posturing, is what we call it. Yes, to get on the emotions of the people.
Correct. Yes. And you see, I am a proponent, just like you, of political independence, but I will not allow anybody to manipulate that process.
No, especially when you're not qualified to do so.
And next to that, right? When you believe in something, right?
Yes.
Whether you in Soualiga, America, China, your belief remain the same.
Correct.
Okay. Marcus Garvey teach us Jack Johnson was bad in America. He was bad in Europe. He was bad in Australia. A strong man is strong everywhere. Okay.
Correct.
So it can't be that when you're in power, you're more concerned with maintaining kingdom ties and so forth and so on.
Right.
And the moment you are out, now
that's
you are
when
talking,
you talk about we
now
need
you're having a eureka moment about the inequality and democratic deficit and so forth and so on. I don't necessarily appreciate that. You see, because it tells me that you're probably not sincere about this.
You're being very disingenuous.
Yeah, and I am not judging anybody. I am looking at your actions.
Correct.
Okay? By the fruit, we're going to know the tree. So I am saying, I'm going to look at your actions. And if I kind of see that kind of inconsistency in your line of argumentation ain't adding up, I can't take you serious.
Yeah. It's always a thing of kind of like a palm tree swing in the wind.
Exactly.
So right now you will hear nothing. But let the Dutch state decide next week or the week that one of them got up off the wrong side of the bed, and they decide next week, you know what? We're going to impose higher supervision. Then all of a sudden everybody becomes human rights activists.
I'm telling you.
And I call it the syndrome of you can beat us with the belt, yes, but the buckle is not allowed. That you're going too far. You understand? Like you can put me in a headlock and you can give me the suplex, but turnbuckle, you can't put my head in the turnbuckle. You can't choke me with the ring ropes. You can't go up and get a chair and bang me with
rules
a
of engagement. There's rules of
Correct.
engagement.
So stay within the rules, and also you can't give me like long-lasting injuries. So it has to be something where I can heal within 6 weeks, and then you give me a next one to heal 6 weeks, but nothing permanent that will keep me bedridden for 30 years. Yeah. That is the way we approach this thing. They need to understand, and I'm just using these as scenarios, that the beating with the belt is wrong, right? And if you're going to take a beating with a belt, right, legally speaking, then you got to understand once in a while they're going to miss and hit you with a buckle too. So, I don't know what it is with them. Every time I see a new one, I'm like, don't forget, we got to go in there and try to work on these things legally and try to get ourselves up. And there's nothing. And I think and I know the answer. I think once they get inside, the halls of power have a way of poisoning well-intentioned people to making them just docile and taking great people and making them mediocre because of the bells and whistles, the travel, the money, the speaking engagements, the Geneva trips, the UN trips, the Hague trips, first class, business class. And then after a while, they just become desensitized and say, look, Walter Rodney said this in his book, How Africa Decolonized, Underdeveloped Africa. He said, and I quote here loosely, he said, when politicians can no longer solve the issues of a country, they turn to corruption. Now, I wouldn't call it corruption this way. For our case, in this case, they just become lazy. They just become lazy. I can't solve it. Friday, I just book a ticket, go Miami. I'm going to go Curacao. I'm going to go, I'm going to go St. Bart's for the weekend just to get away. It's too much. You understand? But the lifestyle afforded, you will never give that up. So you just fake it until you make it. Correct. And the electorate need to wake up and start really putting people in there who, and I know we have a lot of issues, yes, but this is obviously for me and you a very important issue. Correct. Because if we want to, drive this country forward to meet its potential, we need to be able to flex our muscles how we feel like without people on the outside telling us what is best for us.
Correct. Yeah. Correct. And and that is something when I read the document, right? No matter what, it's like a car. The tires in the back will never catch up the tires in front. Yes. And that to me is how the charter is set up. Yeah, we equal. Right? We equal. We are partners. We're going to agree. We have a shared history, whatever that means. Yes. You understand? Whatever that means. But we're going to work together and so forth. And one of the points I made during the same lecture, I said, look, we can discuss all of these values and virtues anchored in the charter. However, it depends on two things. The person who is holding the pen and that person's political ideology.
There it is, sir. There it is.
Because when they set something in motion, they are willing to put aside that charter.
Of course.
In order to ram through their imperative.
Anything they want.
You understand what
And
I'm saying?
and it comes because when you have a legal instrument called the Toezicht, the higher supervision, when you have that as a legal instrument, it means you can do anything you want. Because if
And
you put
here's
up a fight and say, you know what, all 15 members of parliament say, we ain't doing it. No problem. Monday morning, there's an instruction. All of you have to go. We moving. No problem. We sending in the Marines like we did in Station, and we remove you forcibly. That is what we are under. Now, obviously, a lot of people say the Dutch won't go that far, but if you were to dig in, and if you were to dig in your heels, that is their recourse.
Correct.
I believe down by Bobby's Marina right now, the Dutch Marines have set up a base.
Yeah.
When last is St. Martin needed defense of its borders, where St. Kitts or Dominica looking to invade us? Why are you here? Why do you need to set up a base in St. Martin?
Listen, I can give you an idea. My theory is this, because we know right now, our sister island of Haiti is a hotbed.
Yes.
There was a recent report, my brother, and it discussed, I think it was Crime Trends 2024, 2025. But it really looked at the crime in the region.
Right.
And they picked up on the growing amount of organized crime from the Dutch Antilles.
Yes.
With countries as far as Italy and so forth and so on. Okay. Next to that, we have our sister island of Haiti, which somehow has become a magnet for US manufactured guns and ammunition.
I was waiting for you to mention that.
Right? Somehow it has passed. Listen, migrants leaving Haiti can't reach Florida, but guns, I don't understand, is somehow
a 12-year-old boy in Haiti dreaming of getting $20 for a month, running around with an AK-47 worth enough to buy land and build a nice one-bedroom apartment.
That's right.
Where they coming from?
That's right.
Yeah, no gun factories in the Caribbean. As a matter of fact, I've been hearing about escalating violence in the safe zones. Cayman Islands is having an issue. Turks and Caicos is having an issue. So when I see this, and you and I with the trained eye, because you know us already, we are Pan-Africanists, we are Egyptologists, we are chematologists. We know with our trained eye, that is disruption. That's right. Those are disruptors. Those are people because there's no way you can tell me that in these little islands that we are here, that we don't manufacture these things. And in the poorest areas of your countries, because you ain't gonna find them in Kupakoi, you're not gonna find them down Simpson Bay, you're not gonna find them Anse Marcel, you're not gonna find them down Dawn Beach and Oyster Pond. You know where exactly we're gonna find them. In the poorest areas, you find the most expensive ammunition and weaponry.
Yeah.
People barely can people barely can pay school fee, barely can travel around. Most people have a minimum wage job, working 2, 3, 4 jobs, and there is where you finding artillery worth thousands of dollars. Come on, man, let's get serious. Let's get serious.
So the thing is, to me, these are all preludes to the takeover.
Correct.
You understand what I'm saying? Because remember, something that has always come up in foreign relations between The Hague and Soualiga, that we cannot manage our own affairs. Before, when I look at the evolution of, let me say, elections on the islands, we had no capacity. They can't read or write. They don't have enough people. It's always something to justify what they want to do to us.
And here's the funny thing. Go ahead. We don't have the capacity, but we're studying in your countries and coming back with your degrees.
But let me add to that. We don't have the capacity. But when you send your consultants, we are the ones who is getting the information. When you send your students to learn from us to draft thesis, right? Which turns into books, which are used then, which now the author can sell it and make money. We don't get a dime.
We don't get a dime.
No intellectual property.
But you know, and when I say we, I'm not talking me and you specifically, but I'm talking, those that have access to in making these decisions. We have an issue here where, for some reason, and I think we know this, we don't like to look regionally for some reason. So regionally, we have all of this brain power going down the chains. We have one of the best university systems in the world right here, UE.
That's
UE
right.
campus. We have Mona in Jamaica. We have Cave Hill in Barbados. We have one in Trinidad, and we have little splinters around. And we're not looking for these nations that have produced these Caribbean stalwarts so that we can make our own progress culturally sensitive to our reality. You see, if you keep going 6,000 miles away, whether it's America, Canada, because it's not just a Holland thing, but all of them were implicated in this thing for back in. So I don't want to make it just a Holland thing or a French thing. So why is it a young man in Barbados, he decides, a parent in Barbados decides, I want my son to be a lawyer. I don't have money to send him abroad. And he can go from pre-kindergarten to a law degree and have never stepped out of Bridgetown in his life.
Yeah.
Never left the country.
Yes.
Never left the country. Jamaica, the same. As bad as people make Jamaica out to be, you can, from the age of 2 to 35, get a PhD in Jamaica, fully internationally recognized. The same thing goes for Trinidad. The same thing goes for Guyana. So
that's right.
Why is it that we're not tapping into, recently we had the northern side join the OECS. We have yet to join.
Yeah.
We have yet to join. We need to see that these countries like Dominica and Grenada and St. Vincent and St. Kitts, they recently went through their own struggle for their own right to self-determination.
That's right.
We don't have to rewrite these books. And then in place, they've managed to elect leaders that are world-class people.
Yeah.
Why are we not engaging them? Okay, we can be diplomatic and engage all around, but we know what's coming from The Hague. The Hague is going to fill you with negative manifestations always. You can't, you won't be able to. So why continue with trying to foster these relationships with people that are beating you down and not uplifting you? Why not go see Gordon Brown? Why not go see Skerritt? Why not go see Dr. Ralph? Why not go see Madam Motley? Why not go into Jamaica and go and see our good friends over there and talk to these world-class giants that are, listen, you ever hear these guys talk? I spend a lot of time watching these CARICOM guys talk. Dr. Iqbal Mohammed from Guyana. And I sit there and I say, but I don't hear no one. I hear no one talking on that type of I don't know, elegance. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not saying that these guys are not on the take. I'm not saying that they're not, they're not being politicians, but just the outward manifestation of what they present. It shows that the people...
Decorum.
Oh man!
Let me also throw in the mix someone who I just really admire hearing him talk. I can't remember his name right now. He's a foreign minister for Trinidad and Tobago. I think let me see if I can pull up.
Look him up.
Sorry.
No, I know. Recently they had a new prime minister.
Andrew Young.
Okay, Young. That's his name.
Yeah. A light skinned individual.
Yes. Recently put in, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
They go into the election. They go into the election thing cycle now. So they're all about up and on the place campaigning. Is Dr. Emery Brown.
Correct.
Dr.
No,
Emery
not familiar.
Brown.
Not familiar with Brown.
he made I listened to his presentation in the United Nations General Assembly last year. And I think he really did a good job to represent the issues affecting small island states, Correct. So I have to give credit to the brother. But the thing is, what you're describing is outside, I think, to some extent, might be outside of the bounds of what let's say the prime minister can and cannot do, because that's now a foreign affair.
Yes,
Yes,
it is. It is.
unless they were able to have a discussion with their counterparts in The Hague and say, look, this is in our interest, we want to talk with them. And then maybe The Hague would have given them guidelines on topics that you can and cannot broach. I don't know. Maybe that could be it. But I'm noticing, that a number of things that I think a prime minister should speak out on in terms of regional and international affairs, I don't get it.
You don't hear it.
I don't hear it. You see what I'm saying? And I miss that.
Yeah, you're not going to get it for two fronts. Number one, we forged no relationships going down the Eastern Caribbean chain of substance. None. Zero. Matter of fact, you and I could both agree we have more relationships with Latino, right? A better relationship with Latino than we do with our own brothers and sisters down the Eastern Caribbean chain, who we have who are more culturally connected with. That's number one. Number two, you've been pigeonholed into thinking everything that comes from The Hague is for your good. You've been pigeonholed like that. So if it hasn't come from The Hague, it can't be good, or I need to check with The Hague before I do something like that. So that's the second thing. And the third thing, something very controversial. Why is it that we've stayed away from these organizations in the Eastern Caribbean that we're so culturally aligned with? It's because the types of conversations you're going to have at the conferences there, the type of well-read individuals that you're going to have. I wouldn't be intimidated in that room because I'm going to be there. I'm going to be able to talk with them. I'm not going to be on their level, but I'm not going to be intimidated because I've tried to make myself aware. I've tried to make myself macro. I've tried to make myself learning on certain things. So I would be there learning from them, being pragmatic, taking what works at St. Martin and bringing it back here. But when you don't take the time to make yourself better while you're in office, of course you're going to be scared to go to an OECS conference. But here's the sad part. Guadeloupe is an associate member. Martinique is associate member. Montserrat's associate member. BVI, Anguilla, Curacao. Curacao.
Yes.
So it's an indictment of French St. Martin. So it's an indictment about yourself and your self-esteem that you can go now to Latino. Now, what's happening in Latino? As a linguist, let me step in here. Yes. So as a linguist, you go to Latino, your Spanish is not good. So you're forcing now these Spanish people to speak English, which automatically gives you the advantage of sounding academic rather than you speaking Spanish. No, you go to OECS and you go to CARICOM, that dynamic doesn't exist. Everybody's speaking English. You see what I'm saying? And that is what I'm seeing as a linguist. Of course, you want to go to Latino. Nobody's speaking. You can't speak Spanish. So you're forcing these Panamanian, Guatemalan, Nicaraguan academics to be able to speak English, but they're not going to be able to do it on a high level. Okay, maybe they went to school in the States, whatever. But they're going to be not as comfortable because they're not speaking in their language of birth. So you can go there and, how many English-speaking countries do you have at Latino at Latino meetings? Zero. Only St. Martin. Only St. Martin. Yeah, so I see what the gig is all about. Why the rush to go to Panama all the time and not the rush to go to Castries and to go to Roseau, to go to Kingstown and these places, because you're going to be showing up. I've had this argument a lot of times. Let me tell you something. I work with a lot of teachers here from Jamaica, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Dominica, Guyana. I work with them, a lot. Most of the teachers come from those places. Let me tell you something. If you're not sharp, don't go around them. These are some really, really learned, read people coming from our brothers and sister islands down there. And these are just the average Joes that coming up here. The average. And if you see the way they talk, the way they speak, the way they send emails, the way we communicate. Yeah, you have the little jabba. I'm talking official speaking.
Yes.
But my God, These,
yeah.
And these are just the regular citizens who got educations in their countries coming here to teach our children. So you can imagine now their elite down there.
Correct.
Yes, as opposed to our elite here. And this is not knocking anybody, but you know, because you're a man that reads, you're a man that digs in books, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a different. You know, if you're going into these halls of powers and you're lazy and you don't read and you don't do these things,
you get exposed.
It just becomes a hall of mediocrity, and that's what we're having. And so when you have to have these kind of big conversations with the Netherlands, I don't speak Dutch perfectly, but thank God the Dutch are kind of well-versed in English so we can converse. You have to have a certain level of conversation with them where you're not playing victim. If you're coming to them as because that's the narrative they know for 17 years.
That is true. That is true.
So when you come with something different where you're saying like, no, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. There's a better way. There's a diplomatic way. And then steep it in their laws, steep it in their policy, showing them the way you treat Burkina Faso. Now, somebody posted the other day, Burkina Faso getting Dutch fishing, some fishing initiative with lakes. Oh, hail the Dutch. I was like, but wait a minute, slow down. You see the Dutch people there? I said, but hold on here. I've always said this. If the Dutch were really interested in our economic well-being, how come we don't have no Heineken factories down here to supply all the Caribbean?
Yeah.
How come we don't have Philips Electronics on any of these islands here to do the distribution from Canada straight down to Argentina?
Procter & Gamble. Yep. Go ahead. Yeah.
All of these major Dutch brands, why are they not here to put our people to work? And then
it's very simple. Very, very. Listen, that question, that's light work. Because the islands were to be consumers. The islands were meant to be a market for Dutch products. It's economics. That's all it is.
There you go.
Okay, that's all. To me, that's. I
mean, we know the answer. We know the answer. But I'm just proposing to you things that that you can know that that you can see that the relationship is disingenuous. What I wanted to read something to you here quickly.
Sure, please go ahead.
Yeah. So the Kingdom Charter came about in 1955, right? Yes. Yeah. 2 years prior to that, the UN gave instructions to the Dutch state in something called a Resolution 746 in 1953 on the 27th of November. This is what they told the Netherlands. They say that the United Nations expresses to the Netherlands government its confidence that as a result of the negotiations regarding the Kingdom Charter, a new status will be attained by the Netherlands, Antilles, and Suriname, representing a full measure of self-government in fulfillment of the objectives set forth in Chapter 11 of the UN Charter. This was 2 years. 2 years before the Kingdom Charter was presented on the UN floor. The United Nations told Holland that we are to get a full measure of self-governance. To their shock, in 1955, you have, because remember the Kingdom Charter of 70 years ago is still the same today. What stood out to them? This governor.
That's right.
And remember in those days, the governor did not look like me and you.
That's right.
So the governor was a descendant of the Dutch.
Yes. Stick a pin right there. Stick a pin right there.
Yes, sir.
When we look at the evolution, right, of not the text really, but when we look at the role of the governor in the colonies,
correct.
Do you see any changes necessarily?
No, there can be no change because all governors are governed under the Kingdom Charter. So while you put a local face on it, your Baileys, your Holidays, your Richards, your Richardsons, your Ralph Richardsons, your Vogus, and all these people, their role, the governorship, and you know this, is a colonial role. It was the role of the person left behind to oversee the plantation while the dignitaries were gone. You understand? When the main
That's
dignitaries came down, they needed somebody to keep an eye, and that was the role of the governor. It has not changed.
That's right.
That is why if Holland wants to dismiss the government, they give the governor an instruction
Correct.
to do it. They don't do it themselves.
Correct.
The instruction
No,
goes
correct.
to the governor. So when you see a governor there, and again, no personal attacks, just the role.
Yes.
The role of the
Yes,
governor is to do everything that the Hague instructs him or her to do. They are not
Correct.
our ally. So another thing, if you accept a governor, right, as an elected official, you are accepting a colonial construct. Now, St. Kitts has a governor, ceremonial. Jamaica has a governor, ceremonial. Cutting ribbons for the new hospital, kissing babies, but at the football game, giving a medal to the winning team, paving a road, taking a picture, a new daycare open, them kind of thing. But he has no legislative power at all. It's strictly ceremonial.
Yeah.
Yes. So it just goes to show
and I'm glad.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that because Peter Tosh had a song when he said 400 years, the more things change, the more things remain the same.
They're the same.
You understand?
The structure is the same.
And the more the more I dig into this, listen to me, right? Your boy has been going through some different documentation. Yes. And the more I go into this thing, I say, but this thing it hasn't changed.
It's not changed.
The only difference is some amendments, some little reforms happen, but ultimately the practice
is the same. In 10-10-10, in 10-10-10, the biggest mistake that was made was blaming Curacao. How are you going to blame Curacao when they're under the same kingdom charter you under?
That's right.
10-10-10, we became autonomous. I say, did the kingdom charter change? If the kingdom charter did not change, Aruba, status aparte. Aruba, you're still under the same kingdom charter. What status aparte?
Correct.
The kingdom charter that applies to us.
I'll tell you this much. Yeah. I'll tell you this much. Yeah. Mm-hmm. While going through the information, and it has been said in the past, but now it really hit me while I was studying last night. That the war, right? That war. Had it not been for Aruba, Curacao, and I would even factor in the workers at the Shell and Lago, which were predominantly Black people.
Yes.
Holland would not have been, Holland's, the liberation of Holland probably would not happen.
No.
And this ain't Bakari saying this,
No,
I've
never thought about it that way. But you're right.
This is a Dutch historian, Geert Oost-Indie. He's the one that said this.
I've read some of his work.
Because they needed the. Sorry?
Yeah, I'm familiar with some of his work. I said I'm familiar with some of his work. Yes.
Okay, good. Well, I had a great time reading his articles. Okay, and he was the one that said because you needed the oil from those islands and you needed the bauxite from Suriname. And that played a role to helping the allies.
Correct.
Okay? Listen, this thing was so dread. Listen, this thing was so dread that when the German reached, when the army, so the French and the Dutch reached to the islands, they went go check on no hospital.
No.
They went go check on no school. They went straight to go protect Shell and Lago and the bauxite mine.
Yes. Correct.
So if it was not for the islands, and that in turn tells me the strategic importance.
Oh no, it's very strategic.
Islands.
Yes, it's very strategic. With Aruba and Curaçao's position right off the coast of Colombia and Venezuela, those waters there have huge oil pockets. I've heard rumors about oil being found off the coast of Curaçao and Aruba. I don't know how true that is, so I'm not going to speculate. And then for this side. And then for this side, because St. Martin is a hub, but not as much anymore for Anguilla, Sabre, Statia, St. Kitts. I mean, that's changed a little bit now with Anguilla and St. Kitts and some of these islands expanding. But traditionally speaking, we are a very important part here too because of how we are situated regionally with two countries within our borders. But at the end of the day, Bakari, those can't be barriers for us wanting to have a little bit more autonomy. Now, on the flip side, autonomy also doesn't mean that we go and run the coffers dry, so we have to go to the IMF and the World Bank and the Chinese to borrow ad infinitum, so we end up broke within a decade. Right. So there has to be a fine balance. So autonomy, while we talk about external intervention from the Dutch, the other flip side is who we're going to put at the wheel. we need some serious people at the wheel to steer us out. Who is our Bradshaw? Who is our Burnham? Who is our Manley? Who is our Dr. Eric Williams? Who is it that's going to have some benevolence for the nation, take us through the initial tough times, and then get us to where we need to be as far as educating our people, having healthcare for our people to eat, for our people to be able to eat and have employment, and then also seek to expand our one pillar tourism into other things. So it's not an easy job because, we focus a lot of times, the Dutch and the Kingdom Charter and this and that. But the flip side of it is, now who's going to take us forward? And, that's a discussion for another time. But, and I think we would need a round table of my vision for getting more autonomy is that we need to have a think tank, and I think of it as normally as 12 to 15 people of experts in their fields. Yes. Mm-hmm. So you have them in their field: finance, engineering, health, education, all the other factors that you need for a successful running of a country. And you have these people as an advisor to the king, non-political. Yes. Advisors to the king, the wise men, if you will, because if you leave it in the hands of the politicians only, I don't think the current thinking of how we have with our politicians, I don't think we would go very far, looking for the longevity. So a think tank of 12 men and women, all walks of life. We would even need somebody on this panel who is conscious. Have us connected back to the continent, because we can't just do this thing without having some kind of connectivity to the ancestors. It's very important, culturally aware that we go beyond the Caribbean. And you made your journey home, I made my journey home, and we know the importance of that. That's very, very important. Yeah. So, it's a lot of work to be done. But there's two sides to this story, Bakari, and it's not only trying to get our autonomy, but who's responsible enough to handle our autonomy without trying to promote or enrich a little personal fiefdom, and it becomes a Marie Antoinette or a Nero story from Rome, where Rome is burning and he's on the porch having a glass of wine and eating a ham leg. We can't have that either. Yeah. So it has to be a fine balance. Yeah, it has to be a fine balance.
I agree. My brother, I think we need a part two.
Yeah, of course. Always. Yeah. As a matter of fact, what we need to do? We need to actually, and we say this all the time, but I know you're busy, and congratulations on the young one, and congratulations with
Give thanks.
Is that your first one? Or first one?
Right now, she's my youngest. I'm not going to say my last. She's my youngest.
Okay, good. She's your youngest, so you got more to go.
She's my youngest.
All right. I am not going to put nothing in the atmosphere for myself. I'm just going to stay quiet on that. You know how the ancestors are. They start manifesting, and
that's right.
These things come around.
That's right.
But I think what we need to do is, just off record. I know you're busy, and I'm a busy guy, but sit down and chop it up a little bit. These forums are nice, but we have so much more because time constraint. We have so much to discuss. And like I said, you're a very intelligent man. You're well-read. I've always told you that for the years that we've been interacting. We don't interact as much as we used to because, obligations, growing up, jobs, this, that, and the next thing. But this is a very important topic, and you have a very good grasp of it. As usual, when I'm on with you, I learn a lot as well. But I think just I know you have a pressing engagement there coming up, but I think just to close out, when are we going to get our leaders to ask the pertinent questions that they need to ask, rather than it being a knee-jerk reaction every time The Hague decides to act up? And I think that is the $1 million question. Yeah.
I like that question, and I have two responses. I
Yes,
really
sir.
have two responses. One of my Pan-African professors taught me that sometimes we have to capture, right? Literally capture political leaders in order for them to execute our wish.
Wow.
You understand?
And what did he mean? What did he mean by capture?
Okay, good. So apparently the system is built off of crude capitalism.
Yes.
And we know that politicians respond to numbers, whether it's a dollar sign or whether it's the size of the electorate. So if you were able to mobilize a significant portion of your community, a block of voters, and that's how you influence.
Very good.
Yeah. That's how you influence, you see?
Yeah.
And the
block
other
of
way,
like 500 voters, 300-400, enough to snatch up a seat.
Exactly. And you know the thing is,
they will come.
And you know the thing is, on St. Martin, and like what you said it so good, knee-jerk reaction. I have noticed that once there's a movement or a trend or even a motion, and certain politicians get wind of it, in order for them to remain relevant, they try to capitalize and jump on the bandwagon. That's how they are. Unfortunately, that's just how it is at times.
Survival by any cost.
Listen, some of them really lack imagination, and I mean this respectfully. When I listen to the questions in Parliament, most of the time they'll be repeating themselves. Okay? And even when they're giving their presentation, they repeat themselves. So, I mean, if we were to adopt a law, right, a rules of order, an article within the rules of order, I would have to repeat it, but if it's there, please forgive me. But in Grenada, there's a particular section in the rules of order that says you can't be repeating yourself. Can you imagine?
Boy, we would be having a lot of 20-minute meetings, my brother, because
you cannot repeat yourself. The clause of non-repetition, something like that it is. But I was listening to the former chairman of the Grenadian Parliament, and he brought it, and I said, this is brilliant. You understand? Because why are you repeating yourself so much?
Yeah.
It's an echo chamber.
Yeah, and then here's the thing. What was I going to say? This is the first time in a long time that I don't have a lot of interest in watching Parliament.
Oh wow!
It's part of what you were saying just now. Normally, you would get people in. I just don't. How should I put this? Not to say I found the prior ones more credible, but I found the ones before to be a little bit more informative. I find the discourse to be very, very dry. There's not a lot of personality. And not to say it's wrong with it, but I just don't find a lot of personality. And I find the discourse to be very surface level. Maybe I'm missing the wrong meeting.
You hear a meeting about travel? You hear a meeting about traveling first class?
And that is what that one there is what really put me off. And you know what I did? Sometimes we talk about the problem. I even offer them a solution. I told them, I put this on Facebook, and I was on our radio program. I said, listen, when these kind of conversations come up, please be very diplomatic. Say things like, we will look at it further. I think it's something worth discussing. We're going to have a meeting about this, but don't never come out when your people got barely, we're talking about cost of living and increase and this and that, and you talking about business travel. You put yourself out of tune, my brother.
Yeah, that's true.
You sound like a hog at the trough. And I told them this. I said to them, I said, when these questions come up, have a pre-planned answer to skirt that question and go down the road so you sound a little more humanistic. Don't come off and tell us you deserve to travel for business when we know and you know there's been no return on investment on none of your
That's
travel.
right.
So
That's right.
You know what you're traveling for. We know what you're traveling for. Let's don't kid each other. You're traveling to go and have a good time because we see no reports. We see nothing substantive coming from IPCO, Latino, Miami, United Nations. We see nothing. We see sound bites. We see a picture. A week later, gone. So you know and I know you're not doing anything when you're going traveling. So just, just be a little more diplomatic and just skirt those questions. But don't come out and tell us, and I posted an article. They tried to do the same thing with Mia Motley. But Mia Motley comes well documented. So she went to the finance department and she told them, listen, bring over all the receipts for my travel and then bring over all the corresponding monies that we've gained from my meetings abroad. 12 million. Was it 12 million or 120 million? Wow. I think it's 120 million. Oh, let's go look, Ski. $12 million. No, over the year, $120 million in grants, not loans. Grants. She secured from her travel going abroad.
Wow.
And she told them, I don't travel first class.
Oh.
Yeah, this was on Parliament floor. I don't travel first class, and I've secured $120 million in grants for Barbados from all my travels.
Wow.
And she had the receipts there. She went to finance. Remember now, she's a graduate from London School of Economics. So she went to finance. She said, bring my travel, total travel budget since I became Prime Minister, and also bring all the money that I've secured in the years of my travel. So this is the balance of my travel, minus this is your net.
Do you think the parliamentarians and the ministers them here have that type of political maturity, right? Because they claim to be transparent, they claim to be, open and such. Do you think that we'll get that type of transparency, or would we have to wait until we get the budget and then with a fine comb do that type of work ourselves? Because
no, we have to do that kind of work on our own.
Yeah, I think
we have to do that kind of work on our own. Because listen,
I think so.
If you have an elected official that goes out and secures us a deal, some monies where we don't have to pay back, they would make a big splash about it.
That's true.
Yeah, they would make a big. You would know.
That's true.
So, yeah.
Give time.
So
my brother,
I think
we're going to pause here, but again,
because
I have a follow up. Right, I'm running now.
I know. Yeah. I want to come and join you.
For those who tune in, today the Table Tennis Federation is having a Table Tennis Fun Day. It's starting at 1 p.m. until 4 p.m. at the Great Bespoke Auditorium. Right, we just asked for a contribution of $5 US or 9 what is it now, Caribbean guilders, right? To have fun and partake in this event. So you are welcome, all skill levels, whether you can hold a bat, right, or whether you can't hold a bat, everybody is welcome. All right, my brother, I want to thank you so much for your contribution.
And I want to thank you for having me, Bakari.
What is it?
I said I'm looking forward to coming through this afternoon after I'm finished with my chores.
Yeah, man, come through. I got a racket for you too.
Of course.
I got a racket for you. All right. So, family, thanks again for tuning in. And again, we are going to schedule a follow-up discussion so we can dig even further into this particular topic, because we want that our people receive a different perspective with regards to this question of the Kingdom Charter, whether, even though I just call it the Empire's Charter, but that's a next conversation. And we're going to we're going to organize maybe a roundtable discussion would be good, because they were accused of being biased, which I am.
Right.
I am extremely
biased. But it's good to hear both sides.
Correct.
It's good to hear both sides. Yeah.
So anyway, family, I leave you in the words of the most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. Up ye mighty race, you can accomplish what you will. One God, one aim, one destiny, and we are out.